Director's Reflections for February 5th of 2023. Shut up. Practicing journalism in the so-called 12 years of Balaguer entailed many risks. That era began 5 years after the execution of the dictator Rafael Leonidas Trujillo in 1961. But the repressive police-military machinery of the decapitated dictatorship on which Balaguer relied to govern a troubled country from 1966 to 1978 was still intact. In those years, revolutionary dissidents or opposition politicians maintained close relations with a little of young journalists who in truth sympathized with their causes. That could be one reason why the distance between civilians and the military, product of a culture implanted by the dictatorship, affected the relationship of the press with the Balaguer government in multiple ways. Several journalists suffer with death, imprisonment, abuse, disrespect, or censorship, the volatile climate of freedom that prevailed. I felt it firsthand when waiting for Balaguer to leave a reception on the occasion of the independence of the Netherlands back in 1970. The president agreed to speak with the journalists who were covering the celebration. There were 5 of us, but the colleagues chose me to ask him 2 or 3 questions, as many as possible, about current hot topics, while Balaguer was at the doors of his car, ready to leave. It occurred to me to denounce the brutal repression that the police perpetrated the night before against families from the Huachupita neighborhood after a shootout with civilians, which I witnessed as a reporter. As soon as I started to present the complaint to him, the chief of police, uncomfortable and violent, ordered me to shut up, putting his hand on my chest to intimidate me and get me out of the way. But I reacted just as forcefully as he did, yelling at him that he had no right to silence me or prevent me from asking the question. In those moments of maximum tension, President Balaguer tried to quell the confrontation and asked me to ask him the question again. I did, still flustered and outraged, and then came the unexpected. The police chief again stood between the president and me and gave me a push that made me fall on my back along with the other journalists who were behind me. While we were recovering from the violent fall, the president and his escorts left immediately, except for the boss, who now had a free field, overwhelmed me with some adjective that for me constitute a disturbing indication that from that moment on, he entered the government's blacklist of undesirables. Although I really wasn't an enemy of the regime, but a journalist excited to fulfill a duty, I had to get used to coexisting with that wide risk threshold and leave other uncomfortable experiences. For Listín Diario, voiceover and translations by Indira Rodriguez.